Here are 7 super satisfying things to do in Procreate. They are perfect if you don't want to feel any pressure. These are ways to relax without setting any goals for yourself, because sometimes it's just nice to let go and just create whatever. So the first thing that I find really relaxing is just dropping your favorite colors on your canvas and mixing them around. So let's do that. I have opened a canvas, size really doesn't matter. And for my brush, I'll be using the round brush. And you can just fill your canvas with dots, little blobs. No need to think about it. And just make a nice variety of colors that you like. I like picking some colors that are on like the warmer side of the spectrum. And this doesn't really have a goal, but you could come up with some nice color combinations. Who knows what happens? So I'm just filling in the gaps. Just trying to create something that looks pleasing to me. So no pressure. Maybe I'll like to add some yellow. Or you can add as many colors as you like. This in itself is already relaxing, but what we'll do now is go to the magic wand and then to Liquify, and then you can just go ahead and play around with these settings like a twirl left or right, and just go in there and move your colors around. You can play with the distortion and momentum or the size of your brush to get different effects. It's like a ripple on the water. Let's turn it up even more. So just make it swirl. And you can also go for crystals, for example, to make the brush bigger. And just moving those colors around. And just enjoying the effects that it gives. And go back and forth between twirl and those crystals. Just a thoughtless way of relaxing with Procreate. Now make sure to save this image because we are going to use it later on. The next thing that I find super satisfying and relaxing is just picking a coloring page and color it. There is no pressure at all when doing that. You don't have to come up with your own design, just pick the colors that you like. Now to color your coloring page, first of course, import a coloring page. I will leave a link in the description. I found this one on the Crayola website. And you can go to your layer and then tap the N and set that layer to multiply. And then you can tap the plus and make a layer underneath. And then with whatever color you like and with whatever brush you like, you can start coloring your coloring page. Or if you would like to drop in colors first, then you can tap that top layer, set it to reference, and then go to the bottom one and use the fill tool to fill areas. Now, in case you also want to color the line art eventually, what you can do is, well, instead of setting this to multiply, let's set it back to normal. And then we'll tap the layer and use invert. Now we are going to copy this layer. You can slide down with 3 fingers and use copy. Then we'll make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus. Let's turn the coloring page off. And we are going to fill this with black. Let's double tap. Just black for now, or in case you want to use another color for your line art. But let's just start with black. Also make sure that you turn off a reference on this layer. That's very important. Turn that off. Go to this top layer and drop in the black. Then tap the layer over here, the top layer. Give it a mask And then on this layer mask, we are going to slide down with 3 fingers and use paste. And now here at the top, when we pinch these together, we have a layer with just the line art. Now when you tap this layer and set it to alpha lock, you can go over with a brush and a nice color, and you can start coloring the line art as well. And this can give a really nice effect in the final result of your coloring page. The next thing that is super satisfying to do in Procreate is following a cross-stitch pattern. You can find many free patterns online. I will leave a link in the description. And you can download patterns as a PDF and open them in Procreate, and then you will just have like these instructions for the cross-stitch pattern, but we'll only be needing this one. So let's just go to the layers and delete all the other layers. So we just have this layer with our pattern, and we can go to the wrench, then to canvas, and turn off page assist. It'll automatically have that turned on when you import a PDF. Now before we start cross stitching, we need a cross stitch brush, and let me show you how you can make one, or you can just follow the link in the description to get mine for free. What you need is a square canvas. Mine is 2,500 pixels by 2,500 pixels. Let's zoom out a little bit and then set your color to black. So double tap here so you are sure that you have black. And then for the brush, let's first go to, let's see, the inking brushes. Let's use the inker brush. Let's have the opacity at 100%, and let's make the brush nice and big, maybe even 100%. Yeah, that's nice. And then let's make a cross. And I want it to be pretty thick. So this line is pretty thick. And then this one as well, because the thicker it is, the less space there will be around. Your cross stitch will look better. So we're just going to make a fat cross. And we can also make it a little bit like around it, because the thread is coming up. Of course, it has volume. And now what I'd like to do is grab a painting brush. Let's see, maybe the oil paint brush. Let's check that out. Okay, let's make it a little bit bigger, maybe 50%. And I just want it to be like a bit softer. I want it to be a bit smeary. And make sure that you don't touch the edges. Otherwise, your brush won't be very tidy. It'll show. So let's just go for something like this, a nice fat cross. It doesn't have to be super tidy. These will be very small, so don't overthink it. This should work. Now what we can do is slide down with 3 fingers and then use copy all. Then we'll go to our brush menu, and you can create this brush wherever you like. For instance, in your painting set, or you could make a new set. I'll go to the top. Let's tap the plus for a new brush. Then you can go to shape and then to shape source, and then tap import and use paste. Now we have our cross here, and we need to invert it. You can do that by tapping with 2 fingers. Then you need to tap done. And then we need to go to stroke path and turn up the spacing so we have individual little crosses. Then what we need to do is go to Apple Pencil and turn this down so that pressure isn't associated with opacity. We need to turn it to none, And now we can tap done. And oh, let's also give it a name, by the way. You can go to about this brush, give it a name. Let's call it cross stitch. And of course you can add your name, add your signature. Let me do that and then tap done. Now let's make a new layer on top here. Let's tap the plus, then turn this off, and let's just grab a color, and then we can check our brush. I think this will work perfectly. So we can go back to our cross stitch file. Now the easiest thing to do is just go in here in this pattern and then add all the stitches on top. But before we do that, we need to prepare this. Let's go to the selection tool, the S-shaped ribbon, set it to rectangle, and then select this area. Now let's slide down with 3 fingers and use cut and paste. So now it's on a separate layer. Let's move it on top of our pattern. And then let's tab the arrow to get out of here. And now I want my canvas to just be a square with the pattern on it. Let's go to the wrench, then to canvas, then to crop and resize, and then go to settings, and let's make this a square. Let's make it like, for instance, 3000 by 3000 pixels, then tap done. And now we are just going to fit this circle and also our colors. Well, we could have the colors somewhere separate. Now we can grab this layer and go to the move and transform tool and make this bigger so that it covers our canvas. Or maybe make it a little bit smaller so we have some room for our little color palette there. Then let's lower the opacity of this layer. And then on top of this, by tapping the plus, we can start adding the stitches. Now it can be a bit of a hassle in this case to figure out what color goes where. So you could turn this up and then grab those colors and add a little like reminder next to the color that you need to use. So you could just grab a brush, like a little sketching brush, like 6B pencil, set that to black, and then go to your color palette. And then for instance, this one, that is this color, I believe. So we could go make our brush small and add a little reminder there. Then let's lower the opacity again to whatever percentage you prefer. Like for instance, like around 50. Then on this layer, we are going to use our special cross stitch brush. And then we can grab the color here by just holding your finger in place. And now we just need to check our size. Let's make it smaller, maybe 15%. Even a little bit smaller or bigger. You need to find the perfect sizing. And then you'll just tap inside of the squares that need this color. And there's no need to really think anymore. You can just relax, fill all those little squares with all the appropriate colors. It's like coloring by number, but then with cross stitches. And then if you continue doing that, you will end up with something like this. And at this point, of course, you can turn off that color palette and the bottom layer. And for an extra little touch, you could duplicate your layer with all the stitches, then go to the bottom one, tap it, turn on alpha lock, and then add like a dark gray color. Good. So pick that color, then go to that layer which you have set to alpha lock, and then use fill layer. Then let's turn alpha lock off again. Then we'll go to the move and transform tool. And you can just tap here at the bottom a little bit and a little bit at the side to slightly move it and add a little bit of a shadow. You could also add a very slight blur. You can do that by going to the magic wand, then to Gaussian blur, and then very slightly slide to the left, really like just 1 or 2%. And then tap the magic wand again. Another thing that I find very satisfying to do in Procreate is create mandalas or have fun with the symmetry tool in general. You can turn the symmetry tool on by going to the wrench, then to canvas, then turn on drawing guide, then go to edit drawing guide, and here you will find symmetry. Then tap options and set it to radial. Then you can tap done. And when you go to your layer menu, you will see that this layer is assisted, and that means that symmetry is turned on. Now for my brush, I'm going to use like the studio pen under inking, but of course you can use any brush you like. And then when you draw, you will see that everything will show up on multiple sides at the same time. And you can just have fun creating beautiful patterns or silly patterns. Just do whatever you please. Create small shapes or big shapes. Just without any thought, you can create whatever you like. So you can fill entire screens with this, like this. Here's a little bonus tip, something that's also super satisfying to do in Procreate, and that's following a step-by-step tutorial and ending up with a result you'll be proud of. So if you want the most satisfying Procreate tutorials, go check out my Patreon because I have more than 200 over there, plus some really satisfying brushes and just an amazing group of people. I will leave a link in the description. It will be great to see you there. Next thing that is also very satisfying is using a random color picker. And for this, we are going to use that marble art that we created at the beginning of this video. So make sure you have a coloring page or an illustration, both are fine. And make sure that that has like a separate layer. And then tap the plus for a new layer, drag that underneath. And let's make sure that the top layer is set to reference. Then here for the bottom part, we can just pick like a neutral gray or actually whatever color you like purple would also be fine. And then fill some areas. Now I need to adjust my color drop threshold a bit. So for instance, this area, and then on another layer, you could fill like this area. Now you might need to color some parts in by hand in case of this illustration. In any case, it's a bit pixely. So you can do that for multiple areas, and then you need to import that artwork that we created at the beginning with our random colors and shapes. So you can just go to the wrench, then to add, then insert a photo and navigate to your artwork, which of course you need to save to your iPad from the canvas with your artwork. Find it, put it on, and then we need to make sure that it, well, like fills the page or at least covers our illustration. And then let's duplicate it. Let's slide to the left, tap duplicate. Let's put this one on top of this shape and this one on top of this. Then tap the layer, set it to clipping mask, and do that for both. And then to turn this into like a random color picker thing, we need to go to the magic wand, then to Liquify, and then you can either set it to expand or crystals also works. And then we can just go over here and just push long enough until the entire area fills with this color. And like I said, you can do the same thing with expand. Let's go to this layer, then to the magic wand, to liquify, then to expand. Let's make the brush a bit bigger. And then let's just push here. And then this area will fill with this color. Now this is a nice way of random color picking, but with a color palette of colors that you really enjoy and that nicely work together. And of course you could also use multiple marble artworks that you have created. And of course this is also a nice way to recycle what you have created. Another satisfying thing to do in Procreate is just creating shapes and filling them with patterns. Now for your brush, you could go for anything actually. Perhaps we could use the tinderbox. Let's check the size. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And then you can just go ahead and let's just fill our screen. You can go ahead and make a random shape. Maybe it's something like this. You can make multiple shapes. Maybe there is a like circle over here. Let me just make it a bit more tidy. And then we can fill these shapes with different shapes, like sections. And don't give this too much thought. Just do whatever comes to mind. Could be circles in there. Just fill those areas. Until you have a bunch of segments. And of course, this is also a fun thing to do on paper. Just a bunch of segments. And then you can start filling these areas with patterns. And you can create different patterns for every section. And again, there's no need to give this a lot of thought. You can just do whatever comes to mind. No pressure. Just thoughtless pattern creating. Or if you feel uninspired, you can always just look up some nice pattern designs. You could add some extra stuff in here. Sometimes you can start with a really basic pattern and then add things to it to make it look even more sophisticated. It doesn't have to be super tidy. This is just a relaxing thing to do. And you could also go for like lines. Maybe this one has these circles. And if you continue doing this, you'll end up with something like this. The final thing you can do in Procreate that is just satisfying but doesn't really serve a purpose is just having fun sculpting away. First, let's create a shape. Let's just pick a color we like. I like a pink color. And let's just create a shape like a circle. Drag in a color. And now we are just going to sculpt this. Let's go to the magic wand, then to Liquify. And then you can set it to push. And you can play around with the size. Let's turn momentum off. And you can just push and pull And just let your imagination take you and just sculpt whatever. Maybe this is like a character. Maybe it's Ditto. I don't know. You can play around with the size if you'd like to make smaller, like tentacles, who knows. But it can just be satisfying to see something emerge here. And maybe it'll inspire you. Maybe it will turn into a shape, and that shape will turn into an illustration eventually. But it doesn't have to. It's just meant to be fun. And so these were my 7 super satisfying things to do in Procreate. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, and then I'll see you next time for the next video.